And now we're on to Avzaino and base. Therefore, afilu purta nami lo lisfale. From a certain perspective, since the objective value of his karka is 200 zuz, then he's really an osher. He doesn't really deserve to get even a dinar. But the Omar Mar Allah, but Rabbah says to explain the Brisa lo tzricha, it's a slightly more complex case, and the reason why he can collect from Meiser Ani up to the tune of Me'ezuz is because this is a piece of karka which has a fluctuating value on the market. And it depends on whether it's the planting season or it's not the planting season. Nisan is the planting season, and B'Yomi Nisan, Yakra Yikara Arata. He can get a high price for his karka because the buyer will have the advantage, the benefit of threshing the land and immediately planting and harvesting. But B'Yomi Tishrei Zol Arata, the market is very depressed during the Tishrei period, because during this period of market you can't plant, and you'll just be wasting your money by buying a piece of karka now, so you buy for half price. If not for this man's desperate situation, he would certainly not sell the karka during the month of Tishrei at half price, but rather he would wait until Nisan and get the full price. But this man who's got to put money, I should say, he's got to put food on the table, so he needs cash. He's forced and compelled to sell his land at a slash price now in the month of Tishrei, where nobody wants to buy his karka because he needs the liquid cash. So since in Nisan his karka would be worth Masayim Zuz, you can't call him an ani. But on the other hand, you can't call him an Asher because right now, as we speak, his karka is only worth Me'ezuz and not Masayim Zuz, and he's really an ani. So what do we do in this case? How do we navigate through this situation where, in truth, the value of the karka could be sold at 200 in Nisan if we could only wait, and therefore he's an Asher. He'll get 200 zuz. On the other hand, now he needs cash, so right now he's only going to get 100 zuz, and therefore he's an ani. So what do we do in this case? The din is that we're going to pay a meiser ani to make up the difference between selling the karka today in Tishrei at Me'ezuz and selling the karka 6 months down the line in Nisan at 200 zuz. And the difference between the two is 100 zuz. We'll supply him with 100 zuz. And ad palga urche lemezel, tfei lav urche lemezel. The karka in the period of the winter months of Tishrei, etc., will go down by 50%, not more than 50%. And therefore, we can now evaluate his karka at 100 zuz. He's not really an ani technically because he can sell that same karka 6 months down the line at 200 zuz, but we'll pay him from Meiser ani 100 zuz as if he were an ani now with the total assets of 100 zuz. So even though a person who has 199.9 zuz can collect 1,000 zuz from Meiser ani, but in this case, he's really an Ashir. He has the assets, the karka that can be sold 6 months down the line at 200 zuz. On the other hand, if he sells it today, which he's forced to do, he will only receive on the market 100 zuz during the Yemei Tishrei. And we're going to give him a din of a quasi-ani, allowing him to collect from Meiser ani the increment between what he could sell it in 6 months to what he could sell it now, because we recognize his urgent need to cash in and sell his karka. Okay, fine. What does this have to do with Nezikin? And how is this going to reconcile the apparent stira between Meitav and Subin and Shavik Kesef, derived from Yashiv? Hachanami Gabi Nezikin. The same methodology that Rabbah applied to the Brisa, we're going to apply, says Abai, to the stira to reconcile this complex contradiction between Meitav and Yoshiv. How so? The hezek took place in Tishrei. And if we were to evaluate the hezek today, it would only be worth 100 zuz. Now, the nizak comes to collect that 100 zuz from the karka of the mazik. Dinei be'idis. Right, the Torah says meitav, giving the nizak the right to collect idis. So you see that the Torah is working in favor of the nizak. I amrle ihu. If the nizak says to the mazik, you know what, you have to pay me an idis. I'm going to waive my rights to idis. Havli beinis tfei purta. Give me a larger chunk of beinis to offset the difference between what is coming to me as idis and what I'm going to collect from you lamaisa as beinis. So in other words, a larger tract of land of beinis is worth the same as a smaller tract of idis. Amalei, the mazik says to the nizak, hey, wait a minute. You could collect idis, but for you it's beneficial to collect beinis. Why? Because when you collect something in order to sell it, then it's a hard market unless you have idis. Idis, there's always a buyer, there's always an easy market for idis. You want to collect beinis, and by doing so, you're indicating that you don't want to sell it. So therefore, the Masechet says to the nizak, ishaklas kedinach, if you will claim and collect idis kedinach, as the Torah says meitav, okay, then you'll get the karka as it's worth today in idis. But now you're not interested in idis. You want to collect beinis. Well, you know what? If you would have collected idis, you would collect idis according to the market value today, not according to the market value in Nisan, where everybody's buying karka because it's the planting season. So fine. You know what? I would be more than happy to pay you kidinach, which is what? The value of the market of idis as it is today. But Elo, if you, Mr. Nizak, are coming to be tovea beinis, you don't want idis, then shakal kidiyukra dilakameh. Then let's give the price tag of the beinis that I'm going to give you to pay you for the nezek as the price of Nisan, the future price when it'll go up. Obviously, this is to the advantage of the mazik. And here's where we're going to derive from Yoshiv l'Rabbo Subin. What does it mean, l'Rabbo Subin? You can't take this pasuk literally in the drush of Subin that, you know, that the mazik could throw Subin into the hands of the nizak, because the Torah says meitav. And not only that, but although the Torah does say meitav and gives the upper hand to the nizak to collect idis, we cannot interpret it that the nizak could demand karka beinidis at today's price. So that's pashut. You know, if the Torah says that his koach, his rights are to collect idis, fine. He can collect idis based on the current price of idis. And now, if he would want to collect beinis, for sure we would give him beinis because he has rights to idis. And if he wants beinis against the will of the mazik, he can certainly do so. But the Torah is saying that, look, my friend, if you're coming to collect beinis, and so too Subin in the case of Shavah Kesef, then you could collect according to the, in other words, you'll suffer the loss, and you'll have to collect according to the higher price of Nisan. Now, obviously, this makes no sense, as the Gemara is going to point out right now. I mean, just because the Nizak is giving up on his rights to collect Idis, therefore he suffers, and he's going to get a piece of Beininus at the higher price, which means he can get less Beininus. That doesn't make any sense where the Torah is operating in favor of the Nizak. So apparently, the logic of this Hamavin, again, the Gemara is going to reject it right out, as he quotes here. I just want to, say b'shem Omro. He says it in the name of the Chidush Harim, right, the Ger Rebbe, and he says the following: that the true value is the value of Nisan, because that's when we spell Karka. People sell Karka in Nisan, not in Tishrei. Fine. So if he comes to collect Karka Idis, and he's saying to the Mazik, look, I want Idis because I want to be able to sell it, fine. So he'll collect the Idis, which is valuable to him because it's easy to sell on the market, but he can't push him off till Nisan and say, well, I'm sorry, and the Mazik is not going to be able to push him off to Nisan and say, you know what, this is worth way, way more because of its true value in Nisan. So the Torah, by giving the Nizak the rights to collect Idis for Dmei Nizko, is giving him the right to say, you can't push me off until Nisan. So this is in favor of the Nizak, because not only is he collecting from Idis the best quality, but on top, to boot, he's collecting according to the lower market value of today. And he's saying to the Mazik, you can't quote, the book value of this karka in 6 months from now. However, that's because he's indicating that he wants to sell the karka now. So if he wants to sell the karka now, okay, give him the karka of Idis at its current value. However, if he's asking for Beininus, then for sure he's not trying to sell the karka. He has no intention to sell the karka, because it's more difficult to sell karka of Beininus than it is of Idis. So he certainly would have asked for Idis, which he has the right to do. The fact that he asked for Beininus is a Gili Milsa, that he's not selling the karka. El al korcha shu chofetz bekarka atzma. He wants the karka itself. You want the karka itself? Then you're going to get it according to its true market value, and its market value is determined by Nisan. In any event, the Gemara rejects this outright. Maskiflar of Achabar Yaakov. If the Nizak does not have rights to collect from Beininus according to the lower price today, and yet he's allowed to collect Idis, Horata kochu shel nizokin eitzel Beininus v'ziburis. Then now, you're saying to the Nizak, he's going to suffer a loss. Why? Because he's willing to settle for Beininus or Ziburis? Adarabbi, he's being very large about it. He could have collected Idis, and he says, you know what? I'll settle for Beininus. So because he's willing to sell for Beininus, you're going to penalize him, and you're going to say to him, well, you'll get Beininus at the higher price of Nisan. The Rachman Amar Meitav. The Rabbanan is rooting in favor of the Nizak. He cannot collect Ziburis from Beininus and Ziburis from now, the current lower price. Why? Because he's willing to give up his rights on Idis to collect Beininus. Why are you penalizing him when the Torah is trying to award him as a Nizak to collect Idis? And therefore the Gemara rejects Abaye and looks for another answer to reconcile and answer Abaye's kasha about Meitav and Yosef. If you want to give a comparison to Rabba in the Brisa, is Labal Chov Mitaminale. The Gemara is going to reject this as well. And what does it mean, Labal Chov Mitaminale? Bal Chov, in a case where he borrowed money in Tishrei, and Dine Bebeinis, Bal Chov collects Beinis. He Amar Le, if the Malva says to the Lova, you know what? You have to give me Beinanis. I'm willing to settle for Ziburis. Havli Ziburis, Tveipur, to give you a larger tract of land of Ziburis that equals the value of the Beinanis, is Amarle, the Lov has a right to say to the Malva, Ishakas Kedinek Shkol Kedahashta. You could take Karka Beinanis at the lower price of Tishrei. The low, but if you don't want to take the lower price of Tishrei, I'm sorry, if you don't want to take Beinanis, but rather you want to take Ziburis, then Shkil Ki Yukra Dilakame, take and collect Ziburis, but at the higher price of later. Once again, the Gemara is going to outright reject this. In the footnote, he says, Yeshla Hakshos, Heich Sover of Achbar Yaakov. How could he have even entertained such a possibility that because the Balchov, meaning the Malva, wants to settle for Ziburis, therefore the Lov has right to say to the Malva, take it at a high price. Betirates b'shem chidushay Rabbi Nachman. Rabbi Nachman was the Yeshiva, the Mir Yeshiva. Once again, we go back to that principle that the Gvias Karka should be according to the later price, which is the higher price. But Linyan is Zikin, there was a svar to say that, you know what, let him collect at the lower price of now. Mishum shakosum mechayves amasik l'shalom meitav l'chein ef shalom shetor rotz l'shishalom b'karka l'hakel l'hasig al yoda kesef l'chein tzorch l'shalom meitav kizula dahashta. Avol b'balchov asvar pshuti shegova ki yukar d'l'kamei. So again, he works it out that in this Hamamina, there's a fundamental difference between Nezikin and Balchov, and that the real price and market value of later of Yukra is the market value, and therefore the Lova could say to the Malva, okay, you want to collect in Ziburis, then you could collect according to the higher value of Ziburis. Only in the case of the Zikin, there was a special svara to say it the other way around. Maskifle Rav Achabre, he slugs up this svara. Im Kain Alta tells Fifnei Lovin. Why would a person want to be Malva Kesef in such a way that Ilu Havi Lezuzi Hashta Shakli Kedashta? If I didn't lend you the money, but I kept the money for myself, and I wanted to go out to the market and purchase Karka, I can purchase Karka Ziburis according to the present low price, the depreciated price. Now I was a good guy, and I was I should get brownie points for lending you money. Eshkol kiyukul kamei. Now I have to take Karka and collect it on its higher value of Nissan. El Omer Avacha Bereder of Ika. And here we're going to get to the final answer to reconcile this stira. So she collects from Ziburis. But she says, you know what? Do me a favor, jack it up a little bit. Give me a smaller tract of land of Beinanis that's equal in value to the Ziburis. So now the Baal could say to his wife, if you're going to collect Ziburis, which is your right to collect Ziburis, then Enochinami will evaluate the Ziburis at its present, current, depreciated price. But if you're such a big shot and you want to demand an upgrade, and instead of settling for Ziburis, you want to demand Beinanis, is Shakli Kini Yukra L'Kamei, then I'll give you Beinanis at its value in Nissan in the highest value. The Gemara says, Mikol Makom Kash. We're still not satisfied with answering Abai's Kash. Meaning that on the one hand, the Torah says Meitav Sadeh Yishalom, and you cannot pay with anything less than Meitav. That's the Chiyuv of the Mazik. On the other hand, it says Yashiv l'Rabbi Shavim Kesef Filu Sumin. We rejected Abai's original answer, and we still don't have another answer to replace it. Anything that he pays him, whether it's karka or subin, is always to be considered meitav. Why? Because even if the mazik pays the nizak subin, bags and bags full of subin, but nevertheless, if he pays with subin, there are different gradations and levels and qualities of subin. He pays with the highest quality subin. Gemara says, "Meitav sadeuksi." The word meitav doesn't refer to subin; it refers to karka. So it means with karka, he has to pay him idis. So how can you tell him that there's halacha of meitav with regard to subin? Subin is on the contrary is yashin. Rav Papa, Rav Huna, Braid, Rav Yeshua, Mibei Rav. When they came for the base mention of Rav Parshua, they interpreted and reconciled the stira in the following way, called Mile Meitav. Everything that's metaltal is meitav. Why? Because what are you telling me? Something is meitav because it's easy to sell it? Okay, so if you can't sell it here, you'll sell it somewhere else. But when you want to sell karka, oh no, karka you can't sell somewhere else. You got to sell it here. Karka doesn't move. And the leisiv levi meitav ki heich delikpotzol zvini, and we're going to tip the scale, says the Torah, in favor of the nizak, to give him idis that's easy for him to sell. In metaltalin, even subin is considered meitav. He'll always find a buyer for metaltal. Boy, minei Rav Shmuel bar Abba mi Akronia, sounds like the Ukraine. Anyway. The Rabbi Abba. So Shmuel asks the following question, Rabbi Abba. Kishain Shamin, when Bezdin now has to do an evaluation of the karka, the mazik, in order to allow the nizak to collect from his zibur, from his idis, and he has karka that, if you compare it to the market value of the world, it is considered idis, but he has other karka which is superior to that karka. But again, his less superior karka is equal to the superior karka of idis of the olam. Is b'shalo ein shamin, or b'shal olam ein shamin? Should we look at the mazik and evaluate the karka according to the mazik, and they'll collect from the mazik in the karka ma'uli yosesh yeshlo, the best karka that he has, high quality, which is superior to idis the alma? Oh, or shall we say b'shal olam ein shamin? They can only collect the karka from the mazik according to the Rova Olam. And it might end up that they're collecting the mazik's ziburis, because that's equal to the idis of the world. This question cannot even be raised at all. It's not a mokum sofik. According to Rabbi Shmuel, the Amar Liel, on Daf Vav Amid Beis, B'denizak Shaiminon. So from Rabbi Shmuel's halacha, B'denizak Shaiminon, it's pashut that he gives the mazik, that the mazik gives the ziburis of the mazik, because that's called b'denizak shamina, which is shavak and idis of the nizak. So again, in all cases, according to Rabbi Shmuel, b'denizak shamina means that we have a set rule, and we're going to analyze the best quality karka of the nizak. That's called idis. And that's the quality that of karka that he's going to collect from the mazik. So therefore, your whole suffix just falls off the road. Kiti boilach, but when do you have a suffix? Aliba de Rabbi Akiva. The Omar b'de mazik shaiminon. And it means that when it says meitav sadehu, it means sadehu shel mazik. Is mine. Fine. Now we look at the mazik, but the mazik has ziburis and he has idis. Meitav sadeu omrach mono limeute den nizak. Shall we say that the word sadeu and meitav is coming to exclude din nizak? That the mazik doesn't pay the karka that's considered idis of the nizak, because as far as Rofa Olam is concerned, the best quality karka of the nizak is not idis, but the mazik could pay him karka, which would be considered Eitzel Rova Olam Ke'idis, even though he, the mazik, has better quality karka. And even if that karka would not be considered idis for the mazik, it would be considered ziburis. But that's called b'shal olam ein sham. O dilma, or should we say no? That when the Torah says meitav sadeh, it means dafka meitav sadeh. It's got to be objectively meitav. I'm sorry. It's got to be subjectively meitav. It means that it all depends upon the sados of the mazik, and we're going to check out the mazik and see where is his best quality karka l'mutei di alma nami. And that excludes, meaning the mazik can't get away with, even that which would be considered objectively meitav. It's the meitav of rova olam. He cannot pay with karka that's considered for him personally, subjectively, ziburis, even though that same quality of ziburis would be considered idis in the eyes of the world. That's called bida shal olam. Bida mazik shaimina. Right, let's go back again to the boy mine. Shem shamin bishalo. Shalo means the mazik, or bishal olam. So the Gemara says, Amar le, Rabbi Abba tries to answer this question. And he says, Rachmana or meitav sadeu, it means sadehu in the possessive of the mazik. And therefore, if the mazik has idis, which is superior to the idis of alma, that nevertheless, he's going to have to fork that over to pay the nisa. You can't say b'shal olam ein sham because it says meitav sadeu of the mazik. The Gemara doesn't like this. Esvei, I have a kasha on Rabbi Abba from the Brisa, and we're talking about an Adam who has to pay the Nizak or Balchov for Ksubas Isha. And first, the Gemara brings a Brisa with various scenarios about someone who has one karka. Elo ella idis. If, let's say, the Baal or the Love only has karka idis, is kulam govin mina idis. That's all he has. So even though the Baal Chov normally collects from Beinidis, and a Baal normally and the Isha, normally collects from Ziburis, but in this case, the Baal Chov or the Isha will collect from idis because that's all there is to have. But Beinidis, if he has only Beinidis, once again, kulam gov mi benis. That's all he has. Ziburus kulam gov mi ziburus. But now the Brisa brings a scenario in which he has three different karkos. Hoylo, he has three karkos. Idis, benis, viziburus. That's also simple. The zikin, meaning the nizak, will collect from idis. Balchov, meaning the malva will collect from benis, and ksubas isha, meaning the isha will collect from ziburus. However, what happens if there are only two karkos and there are variations? If he only has idis ubeininis, then for sure Nezikin goes and collects the idis. The Balchov now, who wants to collect from beininis, will collect from beininis. That's fine. But the Ish only has rights to collect what? Ziburis, but there are no Ziburis. I mean, this is going to indicate that B'shal Olam Ein Sham. So if the Baal only has Idis and Beinanis, now we're going to upgrade the rights of the Isha to collect her Ksuba from Beinanis because she doesn't have the option of being downgraded to Ziburis. What happens if he only has Beinanis with Ziburis? So again, as far as the Baal Chov is concerned, he'll collect from Beinanis. The Ksubas Isha will collect from Ziburis, and the the Nizak, he doesn't have the option of collecting from Idis because there are no Idis. So he'll have to collect from Beinanis like the Baal Chov. And here we turn to Daf Ches. Now we have another scenario All he has is idis and ziburis. Okay, so as far as the nizak is concerned, that's simple. He's going to collect idis. As far as the isha is concerned, that's simple. She collects ziburis. What about the balchov? And now the balchov wants to say, well, you don't have beinanis. Let me collect from idis. No, he doesn't have rights to go up, but rather he goes down and stoops down to the level of isha to collect from ziburis. Tani mias. Now the Gemara analyzes and raises its question. Mitzia. In the din ha'emtza'i, in the middle din of the brisa, and there's only beinanis and ziburis. Nezikinu balchov bebeinanis uksubasisha beziburis. So we said that the nezikin has no option to collect idis. There are no idis to be available, so you collect from beinanis. The balchov always collects from beinanis, and the isha always collects from ziburis. If you're going to tell me that how do we evaluate the karka? It depends on what the one who has to pay, meaning the mazik, shaman, is teasa benishalo ke'idis. Then his beinanis, because he doesn't have idis, becomes idis, because that's the best thing he has. And therefore, yidocha balchov etzel ziburis. If we upgrade the status of beinanis to idis, then the balchov has no recourse except to collect ziburis. And yet it says here in the brisa that if the lova, let's say, only has beinanis and ziburis, then the balchov collects from beinanis. Why should he collect from beinanis? Yidocha balchov etzel ziburis. Because that beinanis, if you hold b'shalo ein shamin, is really idis. Because from the perspective of the malva, of the lova, the beinanis is his best quality karka, and therefore it's idis. And the Gemara answers, Hacha b'mayaskinon. What is exactly the case here? Even if you hold b'shalo ein shamin, kegon shahoisalo idis. Umachara. So in other words, in addition to the beinanis and ziburis, the lova actually was a proud owner of idis at the time of the alva, and therefore the shibud of the lova to the malva, to the balchov, was beinanis, meaning what? Again, he had what? He had idis at the time of the alva, and the malva has recourse to collect what? Beinanis. And then what happens? The lova went ahead and he sold his idis, mechara. So what is he left with now? He has beinanis and ziburis. But since at the time of the alva, he had karka, which was beinanis, if we hold b'shalo ein shamin, and that beinanis now is mishtabi to the balchov, then we're not mafkia that shibud. V'chein omer Rav Chizda kegon shahoisa idis umechara. So again, let's. I know it's getting late, but let's just for 2 minutes try to make sure we have the right calculation here. Again, the lova at the time of the alva, besides his beinanis ziburis, he had idis. He went ahead and he sold his idis. So the balchov at the time of the alva has rights to beinanis. And b'shalo ein shamin means that from the perspective of the lova, this is his beinanis. Even though now today, b'shas kaviyah, it's his idis, but nevertheless at the time of the shibud, it was beinanis, and the malva had a shibud on that beinanis. so that even after he sells the idis, and now his baininus becomes his idis, it doesn't matter. The Baal Chov still has rights to collect that idis of today, which was baininus of yesterday, because the shibud was chal yesterday. And the Gemara says, Hochinam mistabra, there's a diuk in the brisa that seems to support this. Midaktani achriti, in a different brisa, it says the following: he had only baininus v'ziburis, and the zaken is b'baininus, balchov and ksubasi should be ziburis. So that doesn't make any sense. Kasha adadi. Right here, it seems that the balchov is only going to be collecting from ziburis, and he can't collect from baininus. Elav shmamino kan shahoisalo idis umachara, kan shalo hoisalo idis umachara. So it means the second brisa, he never owned idis. So if b'shalo ain't shamin, the baininus is idis, and it's outside the realm of the shibud to the malva, because the malva has no right to collect idis. So at the time of the alva, his shibud can only be chal and ziburis, because b'shalo ain't shamin, and the baininus is considered idis relative to the loven. But the first brisa is a case, as we said before, and it was supported by Rav Chizda, shahaislo idis umachara, and therefore the malv has rights to collect from baininus, because his shibud at the time of the alva was chal on the baininus, even though today, at the time of the gvia, it's idis. So this leads us to the Bais Ema, which in Mirz Hashem we will pick up tomorrow. Okay then, thank you so much.